Hi everybody, I'm Godwin. I'm an assistant research scientist with the Cooperative Institute for Great Lakes Research. If you're not familiar with that, it's hosted here at SEAS, and it's supported by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to help support NOAA's mission in the Great Lakes. We were asked for the first slide to identify what's the single most pressing need, and I would say that for the work that I do in the Great Lakes, it's prediction. The monitoring tools and technologies that we have available to us now would be just out of this world 20 years ago. We have real-time sensor networks giving us data from the lake. We have autonomous vehicles that fly around the lake collecting data when we can't be there. And this is building on top of decades of painstaking work, mechanistic work in the lab and the field that allows us to understand both the causes and the mechanisms of ecosystem change in the Great Lakes. But I'd argue that our ability to make a prediction or a forecast about ecological change in the Great Lakes is a little bit behind those other areas. I'm trained as an ecologist and a biogeochemist. Three of the topics that I'm working on in the Great Lakes include long-term changes in primary production in the Michigan-Huron system. How do we get a reliable baseline in order to assess past and future change in that? I work on harmful algal blooms in Saginaw Bay and western Lake Erie. I'm excited to be bringing on a group of SEAS Master's Project students this summer to help us quantify the mechanisms by which invasive mussel species can actually make harmful algal blooms worse. And then further east in Lake Erie, I work on the biogeochemical drivers of low oxygen availability and also the release of heavy metals. To give you an idea of the kind of approaches and techniques that I use as part of this work, this is an example of the hypoxia work in Lake Erie. Hypoxia has been happening, it's low oxygen, and it's been happening in Lake Erie since the 1950s. And one of the reasons that hypoxia is a concern for water quality is that under low oxygen conditions, the sediments at the bottom of the lake can release heavy metals. If those heavy metals make it into the drinking water intakes and they're not removed during the treatment process, they're both an aesthetic concern as well as a toxicity concern in the finished drinking water supply. And we know from our conversations and co-design with water intake managers that not all hypoxic water has heavy metals. So while we're really good at predicting when and where the lake will have low oxygen and when and where that low oxygen water might move up towards water intakes, we're really not very good at being able to predict whether or not that water will pose a heavy metal threat to drinking water supply. So in order to get at this question, we sail out into the lake on NOAA vessels and we punch a hole in the bottom of the lake. And we can bring that sediment back to the laboratory in order to perform experiments to identify what are the biogeochemical conditions that allow those metals to leave the sediments, go into the water, how long do they stay in the water, and what is their fate and transport through the lake. All the problems that we talk about in the Great Lakes involve lots of different disciplines as well as stakeholder groups and communities. So for instance, one of the topics in Lake Erie is how watershed restoration and nutrient management far to the west will affect harmful algal blooms in the western part of the lake, hypoxia over here, and safe drinking water for communities all around the lake. You can imagine there's a whole different number of approaches that you can take to this. So one of the things I'm really looking forward to at the end of today's event is finding more opportunities for networking for people that have expertise in other areas relevant to this. And then the last part that we were asked to do is talk about courses. I'm not responsible for teaching as part of my appointment through SEAS, but if I were to do that, I'd be interested to help with a course on applied water quality. There are great disciplinary as well as interdisciplinary courses within SEAS and across campus, but I think that there's a niche for an applied hands-on course to help train the next generation of managers as well as scientists working on water quality issues. That's it. I make time. Thanks.